Stay connected as we discuss shared passions and firsthand experiences intended to enlighten, entertain, and encourage you to try new things. This is not a how-to, this is a why you should. Welcome to the You Should podcast. Today's guest is an extraordinary blend of generosity, adventure, and wisdom. He's an entrepreneur whose vision has transformed dreams into reality, all while maintaining a heart open to giving both his time and his wealth to those in need. An avid outdoorsman, he embraces life's challenges head on, always seeking the next thrilling adventure. But beneath the rugged exterior lies a devoted husband, loving father, and loyal friend, grounded in his faith as a practicing Christian. Whether sharing a carefully crafted cocktail or a moment of insight, he uses his unique gifts to connect with others, leaving them better for having known him. Through his actions, he proves that life is best lived when you share it with those around you. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the show, Jeff McCabe.
Wow. Thank you for that intro.
So we're pumped you're here. I think it's such a cool topic because I think, guys, everyone dreams of having the cabin in the wilderness, right? It's a cool concept. And when we're young, we're building tree houses and forts. And then, life happens and that just dissipates and we forget about that completely. So when did that even enter your mind? Your first time saying, hey, you know what? That's something that, as hard as that is to do, I want to give that a go.
You know what? I think I'd always dreamed about moving out of state, getting up, exactly that, running off into the woods somewhere and having that freedom, that peace, that solitude. I think it's like what you just said is like when you're kids and you just build a fort and you just would daydream and create and it felt, like your own little world and you'd hide in there. I think that was always in there. The first time I got a taste of it was just buying a little piece of property just out basically right on the border of Orange County and Riverside County, which, the only reason I bought that property, and it was cheap. It's really remote. Nobody lives up there. It's inside of a national forest. We call it a little post stand, parcel in there. But I bought it just for the access to try to get up into the mountains because I was trying to hunt up there and I kept getting denied and everything's blocked and anywhere that you can get access to the national forest, you have 100 hikers and mountain bikers and 1,000 people. And so I was trying to get remote and trying to think of different ways. And I found a legal way into the national forest.
I think what's crazy about that, Jeff, is for those of you that live in Southern California, this is Saddleback Mountain, basically, is where you bought this. Angeles National Forest?
That's the Cleveland
National Forest. For those of you that aren't familiar with the area, there is not one structure on this entire mountain on where your land is. There is nothing there. And to your point, there's hikers, there's bikers. So how in the world is there even available parcels? What even made you think to look there?
So the reason I actually searched for property in the first place was I had actually traded some painting. I'm a painting contractor, I own a painting company, and traded some painting for a guy who owned a property that bordered. And in return, I just wanted access through his land. And then I could, four-wheel drive, get up into the national forest, and I could get to parts of the national forest that other people couldn't get to. And was hunting up there, having a great time. And I got one morning, it was probably 4:30 in the morning. I think it was the last hunt of the year. And I'm driving up in the dark and come around the corner and all of a sudden there's a truck in the road. I mean, I'm 4 or 5 miles up, in no man's land up there. And there's a truck facing me and all of a sudden the headlights come on, boom, spotlight. And I can't see anything. And over a loudspeaker, it's like, turn off your car, put your hands out. And like, dude, I'm like,
they're not messing around.
Yeah. And I don't know who this is. I'm all relaxed, excited to be out early in the morning. And, they tell me, get out of the car, hands up. And, I could see through the light shining through the windshield. There's a guy sitting there with an AR pointed at me. So I get out and he's like, let me see your hands, the whole deal. What are you doing up here? You're, are you hunting? You're trespassing, all this stuff. And I'm hunting. And as soon as you say hunting, they're on you. And basically it was.
Why is that a hot top? Why is that the hot button?
DFG.
DFG stands for Department of Fish and Game. And so it was a warden. I didn't realize there was another warden about 30 yards on the hill with another AR. So they
scoped right on your forehead.
Yeah, he's in the dark. You can't see that guy. They had me pinned down pretty good. So they're like, are you hunting? Are you hunting? And I'm in camouflage. I got my rifle in back. And I'm like, no, I'm not. And they're like, you're not hunting? I'm like, no. And they're like, and I'm like,
what's with the camo?
You're not allowed to hunt until the sun comes up. So I'm not hunting, but you're up here. You go, yeah. And, they started really busting my balls and, no one's allowed up here and, there's no access. And I go, no, I have legal access. And so I start saying, the guy who owns the property down here, I have written permission. I drove through his property to get on this. This is a National Forest Service road. I can legally drive on here with a license. I knew all my laws. I knew all the rules. And I was being very polite. But the more I knew the rules, the more they were getting pissed because they just busted a poacher. And they had me on the ground. There it was freezing. They ripped, searched my whole truck, took my guns out, totally ruined my last hunt. At the end, they really couldn't bust me on anything.
When they were searching the car, what do you think? What were they trying to find?
A DFG warden, when they're out there, either if they're on the ocean, they're finding hunters. Their whole point is to bust people that are abusing, either poaching or abusing the land.
Right.
They serve a great purpose. That's what their motivation was and their intent was. They thought they busted me, and
Well, they thought they busted you because you probably shouldn't have been where you were. Nobody else could have gotten to where you were. So you just being there means you probably broke the law.
exactly. And they were excited that they were going to make an arrest that morning.
Right.
So it went back and forth. They were radioing in, calling, waking people up. Because I think this was a Sunday morning.
They're calling people in.
They were getting on the phone and saying, so we got a guy, here's where we're at. Da, 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 da. What can we bust him for?
Phone a friend.
Yeah, exactly.
And it went on for 5 minutes. And
Did they ever cuff you?
no. So, but about 45 minutes later, they got a call. I hear him talking and the guy comes down and he goes, okay, so this is what happened. When you drove from that private property and you crossed a creek down there at the bottom of the ravine, that was actually Chino Hill State Park. It comes under the freeway and there's a little finger. And so when you crossed through that 50-yard, 100-yard creek, you went through a Chino State Park. So you transported a firearm inside of a state park. So we're going to arrest you for that, is what they started saying. And all of a sudden I realized oh shit, they're going to arrest me.
Yeah.
And at that point, I'd been cool with them. I wasn't pushing their buttons. I was just keeping a cool head, but I was
Because you're thinking they're going to go through their process.
I was
and
just
they're going to let me go.
sticking to the laws I knew. I thought I had found everything. And I had no idea that there was.
You think there was?
I don't know.
Yeah.
But they were
Right.
at that point. They're
At
like,
that
so
point,
they're
yeah.
like, so we're going to arrest you, this and that. So at that point, I'm like, and I just, mercy of the court. I just went, hey guys, I'm like, look at everything I've done. I go, everything I've done is try to stay within the law. I've learned my laws. I'm trying to, I'm trying to enjoy nature and the outdoors and everything within the boundaries of the law. And I had legal written permission and I'm here and I know, what time I have to, you can start hunting. I know where I can park my truck. I know, look at all the homework I've done. Am I somebody that's trying to break the law?
Right.
And I go, if you arrest me right now, I go, you will ruin my life. I go, I'm a single dad of 2 daughters. I'm running a construction company. I go, you've already run my background. You see, I haven't, I've never been arrested. I've never done anything. I go, you're going to ruin my life. And I'm like, can you be cool? And I saw the young guy look up at the old cop and he was like, and the guy's like, and he goes, tell you what, you leave. He goes, we're going to let you go. He goes, I really should arrest you. And he goes, I'll let you go. But if we ever see you here again, you're arrested. And so, I was counting my blessings as I'm driving out of there, but it pissed me off, man. So
yeah, you did everything right.
and still,
Yeah.
So in going through that and just being pissed for a couple of weeks, because I'd put a lot of work into that, I'd learned, well, if you own land inside, nobody can deny you access. So then I started going, well, I wonder if there's land in there. And I had a buddy who was a realtor and he had an app and, this was before like Onyx and hunting apps that showed stuff. It was a realtor app that it was very time consuming. Looking around and I find these little dinky just triangles and squares and stuff. And I'd start clicking on them.
Like how big are these squares?
So the property I bought up there is 1,600 square feet.
Right. That's wild. I think for anybody listening, that
That's
is
nothing.
crazy.
That's smaller than most houses.
Yes. So
Yeah, I
you
see.
find, these little parcels are up there. They're 1,600 square feet.
They had
give or
been
take.
grandfathered in that for some reason people owned them or squatted on them or had, a camper. And when they turned it into a national forest,
What happened to those? They were still allowed to.
they got
maintain
grandfathered
their-
in.
Okay.
So they would take a whole swath of land and say, in the 50s, 60s and stuff, they were taking these hills and, this is national forest. This is national forest. And when they did that, if somebody was staying there or had stuff on there or had a truck parked there or whatever, they could, this is my property. And they would grandfather in these little chunks and pieces. And this is all it was, is 1,600 square foot. Most of it's on the side of the hill. The usable flat space is no bigger than the sound studio here. And using this guy's app that he had back then, it pulled up tax records. So off the tax records, I could see that a guy had bought it 10 years previous, and he bought it in a tax or lien auction. And the guy lived in Minnesota. And so I wrote him a letter, because all I had is an address there, and just saying who I was. I'm a family guy. I live here. I'm interested in buying this land just so I can have access, so I can take my family up there. I'm just looking to, and the guy wrote me back, and he's like, that's pretty cool, this and that. And he gave me his number. I ended up calling him, and he goes, tell you what, I'll sell you the land for what I bought it for. He goes, I had hopes and dreams of going to California one time and looking at, he had no idea where it was. He just bought it sight
building
unseen.
a palatial estate there.
Yeah,
and
Got himself a piece of California back in the day on the cheap.
Yep.
Totally.
Yep.
So he goes, I'll sell it to you for what I bought it for, plus the taxes I paid on it for the last 10 years. And I'm like, okay, I had no idea quite what he paid.
What was your expectation of cost when he said that?
I had no idea. I mean,
Were you thinking like 20,
I'm
30
just
grand, 10 grand?
I was thinking 10, 20,
Yeah.
30 grand. So anyways, he ended up coming back and he's like, yeah, I bought it for $2,300. And the tax over the last 10 years, he goes, it's right about $2,900. So for $2,900, I'm buying this little useless piece of land. But it wasn't the land that was important. It was the access and getting the keys.
In a primo spot.
And you have to be on, a title. So as soon as I do that, the one buddy who let me use the app and kind of helped me, and then both my brothers, I said, hey, you guys want to go in on this? So we all fronted like $700 each. We're all on title. And then as soon as we've got this piece of land, then it was getting access.
Yeah. So I'm sure that's a whole different story, right? So now you have your deed, you have the land, you're the owner, but now there's all these different agencies, right? Or
Lock gates.
a lot of gates, right?
Everything in California is just locked down. You can't get on dirt to save your life here. And so, we went to Orange County and we started, I think we went to City Hall or something. We started there and we just started, we used the law, and there was a penal code, blah, 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 that if you're an owner, that no entity can deny you access. So we go to Orange County and we're like, hey, we would like keys to Black Star and Silverado. And they've got massive gates there. And they're like,
piss off.
Yeah.
Like,
And
what are you doing?
We just started saying, hey, here's the law. And they were like, well, those aren't our gates. Well, we'd had pictures of the gates and it says it's county gate number, 760.
You think they didn't know, or they just were trying to?
They were just trying
to get you to go away.
Yeah.
And I don't think they had been asked before.
Right. True.
So, and then they're like, well, Orange County, well, okay, it says say county gate, but we just can't give you keys. And I'm like, well, here's the law, and I'm like, let's see your supervisor. And we're just very politely just working our way up. And it ends up that it was I think it was the water district, Orange County Water District had the keys. And so we went over there, they made a call, and we went over there and talked to a supervisor, and they're like, this is really weird. We've never just given keys to people.
Yeah, because you would never in a million years think that there's a plot of land on Saddleback Mountain.
So
in that area,
we got issued keys, and we kept our letters saying, from the county, issuing. And then the next thing was we went to Riverside County on the other side of the mountain. We did the same thing over there, and they bought us, and we got them to, give keys.
Yeah.
And then we're like, oh, what the heck? Let's go to the forestry department, because on the top ridge of the mountain, there's forestry gates. They'll shut them for fires, and they're almost always open. But we went to the forestry department, and we get the supervisor there, and we start telling him, well, we own property, and look at right here. Here's our deed. And he's like, well, why are you guys here? We're like, because of all the gates on top. We want keys to your forestry gates. And they're like, we don't hand the forestry. Out. And we're like, but what if you shut them? And he goes, the only time we shut them is if there's fires. And I go, so you're telling me when we have our Girl Scout troop on the property and a fire starts and you shut all the gates and lock us in? So
here you go.
So we got the forestry keys. Yeah. So once we had these keys, we could get in and out of any gate and the whole Cleveland National Forest.
Right.
Then it was just explore. We were 4-wheel driving every weekend. We were going all over. We'd drive way back, 20 miles up in there, and then we'd hike into canyons and waterfalls, and it opened up a whole new playground, and we were hunting up there, and the hunting up there sucks because it's Southern California.
Horrible.
But it gave me my first taste, that little piece of land there and the little flat usable space. We just built a patio cover with 3 sidewalls and just a cheap patio, solid top.
Yeah, and we went shooting up there one day with you. Mike was there, right? And it really was like, oh my gosh, this is real. Like we're on Saddleback Mountain. There's hikers and bikers and all these, but here we are.
And you just get past all of them, and you can get remote. And then that was that first taste of like, man, freedom. And I would take my my girls up there. I think at that point, my youngest was probably 3, my other one was 5, and we would camp. We'd put a tent up there, and we'd go up and watch meteor showers. My wife now, we'd taken up there, and me and her had gone up, and it was really cool. And then taking friends up there, and you could.
Right.
Where else could you go and just shoot?
Yeah,
In
nowhere.
Orange County,
It's nowhere.
Yeah, any place you could shoot, they shut it down so quick,
Mm-hmm.
and so we could go up there and shoot.
Well, yeah, and one of the things I didn't realize is the amount of space there really is once you get up into Saddleback Mountain. Like there is a lot of space up there. There is a lot of just open terrain. Like we've all done the little Black Star, gone up in there, done some hiking or mountain biking. But when we finally got up to your property up there, there's a lot of space.
Yeah, it was about 14, almost 15 miles from that Black Star gate.
Is it
to
really?
our property. So you can drive 15 miles on dirt. In Southern California, that's a lot.
Yeah, that's a lot.
In Montana, it's nothing. That's what they drive to get to the highway.
Hey, disclaimer, people that are listening to us.
So let's just touch
Mike,
on
you
that
need
for a
to get
second.
that. Come on, Mike,
So,
you're good at this.
We're in Orange County, California, which is
4 million people.
which is super dense. There's not a lot of open space. So to have something 30 minutes from door to door where you could go up and actually shoot,
Pull out a 308 and shoot 200 yards, 300 yards,
it's
right?
unheard of that you could do that legally
In Orange County lines, So that gave me my first taste of freedom.
So that kind of led to, hey, you know what? This is really cool, but we're kind of limited to maybe putting a tent. It's a very small footprint.
And I was using the heck out of it, but it gave me that taste of, wow, if you own a little piece of land, you can get, you get something that is hard to get here. And I love freedom, and I love adventure, and love the outdoors and just the peace.
So you're up at Black Star, you guys are having a blast, you're camping, you're hunting, you're shooting. And then at some point you had to think, hey, you know what? We can only do so much here. What was the next move from there?
A great question. It wasn't actually me. It was my brother. He's cut from the same cloth, and he was looking for remote properties, and we daydreamed about building a cabin, and we were really looking for hunting access and hunting space. We'd learned from this and we buy a piece of property, and then that can lead into open up other areas for hunting. And that was kind of our main motivation. And he was online, he was searching different stuff, and he'd come to me like, hey, there's this piece of property up by the Kern River. Hey, there's this piece up on Big Bear. And I always thought it was a little bit of a pipe dream. And he had actually connected and reached out to a local realtor on a mountain called Palomar Mountain. And he had talked to her and was like, hey, do you got any leads, this and that? And she goes, you know what? I just heard a rumor that 50 acres were going to come available. And my brother just jumped on it. He's like, well, call the lady. He contacts the lady with the help of the realtor and said, hey, you want to sell the property? And she's like, well, I don't know what it's worth, this or that. And that's when we decided, okay, she's considering it. Let's go up there and take a look at it. So he gets me, and I'm like, yeah, let's go. So we drive up. And at this point, I'm thinking, I don't want to buy property way down here in the middle of nowhere on some mountain I've never been on. But we drove up there, and it's legit. It's, our property was at just about a mile high, about 5,000 feet.
That's legit.
The top of the mountain is much, more than that, 6,000 something. Access back there was really rough. There was massive trees down, like you couldn't drive back there. So we hiked in from the main road just over a mile and find this property, and it's just completely overgrown and untouched. Like there had been nobody on this property forever. It was real remote. We were talking about hunting, and this could be our own hunting camp, and we were, camping site, and we just started daydreaming.
So to paint a picture for those that aren't familiar with the area, right? This isn't barren land with nothing on it. You're on the side of a mountain with oak trees and pine trees and wildlife, and this is essentially a forest.
Yeah, it's heavily forested, old growth oak. There was oak trees there that were easily 250, almost 300-year-old oak trees, giant big pines. A bad fire had come through about 10 years before and took out a lot of the trees. And so there was a lot of undergrowth that had grown. A very evasive plant called ceanosis. It grows 12 to 15 feet high. It's super tough, and it's got thorns. It's horrible stuff. It was so overgrown and choked after that fire that when we first saw it, really, when we went down and looked at it, we may have seen an acre is all we could really see of the 50 acres. But it bordered, like I said, I'm trying to remember if it was 300 or 400 acres of national forest, very steep, very remote and rugged. You can't drive it. It's hard enough just to walk it. But cool, we have the spot we can go that nobody else can get to. Yeah. So we hit the realtor, start pushing her. The lady's like, I don't even know. And we said, offer her 50 grand. Then we got my oldest brother, John, on board. He started seeing the daydream. So the three of us brothers go in there, John, Jim, and Jeff. And I'm like, okay, you know, so it's still a lot of money that
Right.
back then
For just a
single
for just
dad,
basically a piece of the forest.
yeah, you know, that's 2 hours away from
Right.
where I live. So the lady accepts the offer. So we're like, and then the daydream starts going on, and man, this and that, and that's all I can think about, and I want to get up there, and we start escrow, and all of a sudden the realtor calls like, yeah. So we pulled title, and there's someone else on title, and apparently this guy had a business partner. Okay, so we track down, he's passed away, but his wife is still alive. Get a hold of her, and she's like, oh yeah, well, I don't care, you know, and she knew the other lady,
Right.
you know, and this and that, and but let's do 60,000, so it'll be 30,000 each. We're like, okay, what's another 10?
Right.
You know, so okay, so we're going to doing $30,000 now.
Mm-hmm. You get out to the property, you're looking at it, you start daydreaming. What are you starting to think you can do with this property?
Yeah, so you know, as this lady's contemplating the offer, and just start thinking like, wow, this could be ours, you know, and this could be mine. And I start thinking about honey, and I'm like, dude, we could put like a wall tent up, you know, and a fire pit. And then it's like, oh, well, you know, why couldn't we build a little structure, you know, like a tough shed or something, and we could sleep inside of it? And all of a sudden, just the daydreaming, I can start cutting some trees and clearing stuff, and you know, building tree stands and putting up game cameras and all that stuff. You know, the day-to-day grind of working. And, you know, back then, this was late winter of 2016 when this all started happening. And, you know, the day-to-day grind, I'm at work dealing, you know, as a single dad, dealing with kids, you know, just going through life. And I just found I would escape by like every day I'm just daydreaming and thinking, and like the value of just that to me back then, it was an escape from day-to-day life. And it was, it made dealing with work and people and everything else that I had going on, just, it made it easier when I could, you know, whether it's going to bed at night and just sitting there thinking, or, you know, you're just going through the grind.
And Jeff, I think this is a key point, because we all do the daydreaming. We get pumped, but then 9.9% of the time it leaves. What pushed you over to take on the challenge 2 hours away while you're an owner of a successful painting business and you're busy and single dad and everything that's going on, to say, hey, I'm going to take on a new property that's covered in forest, and I'm going to try to build an escape, to take that leap? Like, what led you to actually do that?
You know, there was a moment I think I'd said that we were, you know, in escrow, and there was a second owner. Well, there was a third owner. Mm-hmm. It ended up getting up to like 75 grand. Now they all wanted 25. And so
were you guys thinking about just walking away like, hey,
I was, because 25 grand for me is a lot of money.
Could be a bit of a pipe dream.
Yeah. We decided to do it, and I remember I was uneasy about it, and we're like, okay, we'll do the 25 grand. And we were waiting, and they accepted our offer. We entered escrow, and it was short because it wasn't like a house where you're having to wait 60 days. So it was like a matter of a day or two. The day I think we heard that, yeah, okay, they'll take the offer and good, you know, we'll sign some paperwork tomorrow, blah, blah, blah. My sister called and was like, hey, dad's in the hospital again. And, you know, he loved smoking and drinking and not exercising and in poor health. And he was in and out of hospitals all the time. So she's like, hey, I've been here for like 5 hours. I need to get home to the kids. Can you come? You know, yeah, all right. You know, normal thing. So go down to the hospital, and I'm sitting in there telling him, hey, Dad, you know, we just bought 50 acres. And he's like, what? You know, like on a mountain? And he's like, why the hell would you do that? Like, you know, and how much? And he's like, you spent what? Yeah. And he was so just like not understanding.
Flabbergasted.
And I'm starting to tell him, but Dad, it's beautiful. It's this, it's that. And probably within like 30 minutes later, he stroked out and died. And I think that was on a Wednesday. And that Friday after work, I drove up there, and we had owned it for, I think, a day or something, signed paperwork. So I drove up there and then hiked in and started a little fire, threw a sleeping bag out, made myself a steak, and I was just grieving and processing the loss of my dad. And there was one little clearing where there was all these wildflowers on the side of the hill, and I went down and laid on my back and looked at stars and was praying to God and talking to my dad. And like, I think part of what happened in that moment was like I fell in love with the place, and it was hard to explain. Just like I connected, and I just had this like amazing time up there, sleeping in the woods, unknown woods, by myself on the ground in a sleeping bag with a little pistol and a bottle of whiskey. And it was amazing.
Great. Always a good recipe. Pistol and a bottle of whiskey.
You know, they go together. And
they really do.
You know, and it was pushing, you know, I'm an outdoorsman, but even that's pushing the boundaries a little, because I didn't know really where I was. I'd been there once before, but I at that point I needed to get away, and I think I needed to escape into the dream. And like I said, going up there just kind of helped that that grieving process. And that night was rough. I remember just being up there crying, but like good tears and, talking to God, talking to my dad. But something about that place, I just connected.
Just resonated with you.
It was like, and then from then, like I was all in. Then me and my brothers just started daydreaming and we were talking. And the other cool thing is through that loss of my dad, and it brought the three of us, because we are very, very different. It brought the three of us together, and we were all three texting each other and calling, and then like, hey, let's get together and talk about that. And so all of a sudden we'd like get together, on a Tuesday night and be talking about it, which we rarely would just hang out because we're different and life goes on. And we started just building the dream.
So the building the dream, you're referring to actually like building structures on it, developing the property into how you guys are dreaming about.
And it started with like, well, what if instead of just like a shack, like what if we actually built like a house, but like a cabin, and we could do this and we could do that, and we would have different rooms. And it just went into where, well, I think we're, one cabin's not big enough. I think we need two. And then, and before we knew it, we were all in on building our own cabin.
Wow.
And we really didn't know what we were doing. We didn't have any idea. And we picked out a couple key spots, hired a guy up on the mountain with a tractor to come in and cut us a couple pads, and we paid him cash. And now all of a sudden we've got pads.
But then you got an architect, an engineer, you got all your civil done, right? And you got all that through
the permits and all. Yeah.
And you got all that through the county.
Oh,
San Diego.
Yeah. Those papers are somewhere.
Your topo, you got your topo done, right?
No, we knew that doing it off grid, there was a risk that, if county found out, city found out, you could get red flagged, meaning that you could never sell the property with structures. You'd have to tear them down. We kind of just waited out and went, you know what, screw it.
Yeah, we don't want to go through the 2-year process. No. God knows how long, actually.
Yeah.
So let's just take a second. So people that aren't aware, because I wasn't aware.
Okay.
The difference between building a structure that has a like USPS address versus what you guys did was just building a structure on a piece of land.
Correct.
Explain the difference of why it matters.
There's no address. There was no permits. There's no utilities. The city didn't know we were there. If you wanted to build a structure there, you would need insurance. There was no way we could get or afford insurance. The roads have to be so that a fire truck could get back there, and there's no way that was going to be there. So we realized there was actually no way to feasibly do it. So we said, screw it. Let's just roll the dice. Let's do it.
Was it illegal what you did? Or did you guys just build outbuildings, not residences, essentially? Well, like how does the county view that structure?
It's illegal structure.
It is an illegal structure.
Yeah. Legally, you can build, it's either a 10 by 10 or a 10 by 12.
Sure, limited on square feet.
Without a permit.
Basically a shed, right? So he's talking, it's like a shed. It's like anything under 100 square feet you can build without,
like what would have happened if a county inspector came in and saw 3 cabins that were not permitted?
I think like you would get red tagged. From my understanding, I could be completely wrong. Like if the county caught wind, they would come in and like, hey, you can't have these cabins here. They can't make you tear it down. I think it's different in a city of Orange. If you built something, they could say, yeah, you've got to tear it down. From our understanding there, from talking to people, whatever, they would be like, what we're going to do is we're going to red tag you. And that property is red tagged.
Stays red tagged. Then if you go to sell it,
then
you have to sell structures.
Everything has to be leveled and cleared
before you could sell.
Oh, that's cool.
Okay.
Our intentions then was to never sell.
Right.
So we're like, so what? They come in and red tag us. We're going to own this property for 50 years. Screw them.
Right.
Was kind of our thought.
So when you guys decide, hey, we want to have 3 structures, each brother will have a structure.
Yeah.
Do you just get at it? Like, is it just, hey, I'm going to go to Ganal and Home Depot and just get a pallet of
none of us had
building material?
None of us had built a house before. None of us had, I've got,
but you can build a house from the ground up, right?
And now I could. I think the key is what can you learn? Right. And so it's like, I didn't know electrical. I didn't know plumbing. I didn't know a lot of that stuff. I knew a little, but I think the key is reaching out to people. Just what I learned is if I came to you, Mark, as a contractor and said, hey, Mark, I'm building this contractor. Will you come work on it? The reality is a plumber doesn't want to go do plumbing on the weekend because it's work and he needs to get paid. But if I went to that same plumber and said, hey, and this is a true story right here, just a guy in the neighborhood that I saw in a plumbing company. I didn't really know him, but I kind of had my hand drawing of where my toilet, my shower, my sink, and I did a homemade septic system. And I went over to him and just said, hey, I'm building a cabin, and I could see he's like, oh, yeah. And I was like, I just want you to tell me what do you see wrong with this picture? Can you give me and then the guy was like, oh, you just want advice? He's like, yeah, okay. And he's like, so you need a 1/4 inch drop.
Yeah, make sure
between
you
here
have your
and here.
fall right.
Yeah, and that's so many feet. So if you're going to put your septic here, you actually need to lower it maybe 12 inches in the ground there to get enough drop. I was like, okay. And he's like, and you don't have a P trap on here. And I'm like, well, do I need a P trap on a toilet? And he goes, yeah, absolutely. So that's actually going to lower your pipe about 2 inches if you put a P trap. So now that 12 inches, make it 14 inches over here. And I'm writing notes and this and that. And okay. And I'm like, anything else? He goes, you don't have any vents. What's a vent? Well, if you don't
overrated.
If you don't run a vent up, you're going to create like suction and gases.
No bueno.
So you need a vent.
Yeah.
And I'm like, shit. Okay, where would I do? And he tells me how to run a vent.
That's awesome.
I did the same thing with electrical, and had a buddy show me how to wire up a socket. And a funny story about that. I've got a good buddy who's an electrician, and I'm like, hey, these switches. And so he's like, okay. And he does like 1 or 2 for me and wires them up and like, okay. And we just ran, basically it's called Romex. It's like a glorified extension cord through the walls, and they come out where the sockets are. And we put some sockets and some switches, and we were having LED lights. And so he shows me how to do it. So I went through and wired all the other ones in the cabin and took a day and did all this and finished them all off, put them all on, put the plates on. And dude, I was so proud of myself. Like, yeah, look at me now. I'm an electrician. It was probably a couple weeks before I actually hooked battery, solar panels up. And I just ordered 100-watt solar panels, mounted them on the roof. And then we got golf cart batteries from Costco. They were $89 each.
Yeah.
They're 6-volt deep cell golf cart batteries for $89. If you put 2 of them together, and once again, I had an electrician tell me this is the right way to connect them, and it's like in series or something, but there's a way to do that, and you make them 12-volt batteries. And then we had basically, what was it? It was 1, 2, 3 12-volt batteries, but they were 6 batteries in total. And so then there's that first night, I remember I was up there with my daughter, Gemma, and her and I were up there working, and I think there was a light snow that night, and it was the very first night I'm in the garage and hooking everything up, and I'm like, all right, I think I got it. And went in and screwed in a light bulb, and all of a sudden it came on. It was like,
damn.
we were like,
Right. That's a hallelujah, right?
dude,
Like,
it was awesome. We were high-fiving and hooting and
Yeah.
hollering because at that point we had been like candles and lanterns. The lantern gives off a bunch of gas. It bothers your nose after a while. You can't leave it on all night.
Right.
So that first night was awesome. And the lights are on, but I'm like, oh, the switches are off. I was like, huh. So I went and turned the switch on, and the lights went off. I was like, huh.
All right.
Realized I did everything backwards. The whole place was wired upside down.
Oh my gosh.
And,
Yeah.
which really doesn't hurt anything, but we're used to going in and turning a light on,
Right.
turning a light off. I never did get around to switching them back.
During the course of that entire build, what was the proudest moment you had?
Proudest moment.
Well, the lights going on was probably
That's a
pretty
big one.
significant.
That's a big one.
There was a lot of those milestones. The first
Right.
time I started a fire in the wood burning stove and we had heat, that was huge because it's freezing up there, and we get big snow banks, and we were running these little propane heaters.
So that's it. Yeah.
So that was a huge one. Stove. We were cooking on Coleman stoves, and
So it was a progression.
it was all these little things. But
Mhm.
you know what? Probably the best was I was probably 90% done with my cabin, and my brothers were as well. We were going up there. I mean, there was I would take almost every Tuesday off, and then sometimes I would go up on the weekends. Sometimes I would link it, and I think there was like 6 weekends in a row. I went up and worked and worked and worked, and it just became like a passion. It was an escape. Yeah, you asked about what was like the proudest moment. So it was Thanksgiving, and we decided to have a big family Thanksgiving up there. So, we got the 3 brothers, we had all the cousins, my mom, a couple in-laws, and we put 3 picnic tables in a row, made a long table, and we had kind of like an old school Thanksgiving. And it was a time we just took a break because we had all been busting our asses, and everybody was there and the kids were there. It was just an amazing day in the fall, the sun, the temperature. We, said grace, gave thanks to God. And I'm just looking around going like, dude, like those are those moments when like life was good, and the family's there and the kids are there and everybody's healthy. And it was just this snapshot of like this amazing Thanksgiving that we're having up in the mountains at this place we built that a year earlier was just overgrown. And that really stood out. That was really, really a cool moment for me. Probably one of the most.
No, I would imagine. I mean, Jeff,
Yeah.
that's in the top of the pyramid as far
Yeah.
as I feel like. Did you have a bourbon and you were doing this at any point, like walking around with a bourbon, like at Thanksgiving? Were you doing like just kind of like
on
this is
Thanksgiving or like
yeah, like
every
this is
night I was up there?
This is my house. I'll do what I want.
yeah, like I imagine just like walking around the property, seeing everybody in their places, your entire family, like everybody's there, and you're
It
just
was yeah.
like soaking that in.
It was amazing. You talk about bourbon up there. What I didn't realize when I picked the spot, cut a little pad, started building my cabin, I talked about that plant, the ceanosis. It literally is as tall as this room, and it's an impenetrable wall. I kept cutting on it. I'd take it when I'd get a tractor up there, Bobcat, I'd be ripping plants out. What I didn't quite know, and none of us realized when we even started building, we had a view. So I cut this wall of brush, maybe 40 yards worth as it started to drop off the side of the mountain, and it opened up a view of the Pacific Ocean for me. So
damn, I mean that's
from
like,
the back deck of my cabin,
oh my God.
there was an old church pew that I pulled out of a church and rebuilt, and I had it sitting back there as a bench on the back deck. I could look out over the Pacific Ocean, and on my far right, I could see the tip of Catalina Island. And then straight out from me, I could see San Clemente Island, and that's 50 miles off the coast. But we're up so high. And then I could look south down the coast. I could see San Diego and the bay and all that. At night, you could see this dramatic difference where the Mexico border was. The light changed, and there was definitely like a line of demarcation there, and you could look down into Mexico, and on a clear day I could see the Coronado Islands off of Rosarita Beach in Mexico. So I could see the Coronado Islands to Santa Catalina Island from my back porch.
I mean, that's crazy.
We had the most amazing sunsets. I mean, it was amazing. So my kind of tradition up there, if I was taking off after Friday.
Yeah, so let's say it's like Friday. When do you skin out of OC? Like 2? You're down there at 4.
Depending on the time of the year.
Yeah, 1, 2.
I would try to time it, and my goal was always to be there in time for the sunset and pour a drink. So whether I was up there working all day or just trying to get out of work, and traffic and kids and everything else, but man, I'd get up there and sit my ass down, watch that sunset, have a drink, and you get up there, and I knew once I got there, like that time in life was my time. There was most of the time, a lot of times I'd be up there completely by myself, and I had no one to answer to. Turn the phone off, escape from work, escape from life, and that freedom of, if I wanted to sit on that back porch and watch the sunset naked, shit, I'd do it naked. If I wanted to have a drink, I'd have a drink. If I wanted to be shooting guns, I'd shoot, whatever it was you wanted to do. But I just had the freedom up there knowing that nobody was going to walk up on me. Right. Nobody was going to stumble in. No neighbor's going to pull up. Nobody's going to call. And hey, you could tune out and just decompress. It was like the best medicine.
It's almost like you could actually be in the moment, which is very difficult to do in your normal day to day, is to actually be in the moment and downshift enough to enjoy what's going on around you.
Yeah.
Right. Like you didn't have all the distractions. You didn't have the cell phone when you guys first were up there. Like there was no cell coverage. There was no people. There was no distractions. You could be.
No, and I feel like, Mike, that's a great point.
Circle it back to something you said, which I think is a bit overlooked, was, you were going up there with your girls, the 2 girls, and they were young.
Oh, yeah.
Right. Aside from it being essentially Neverland to them, this was their wilderness. They could go frolic in and have a great time and have their adventures. And like, this was like the setting that you created for them. They'll have those memories forever. But what did they learn from it in that? My dad built a cabin, right? So you hear like, oh, my great grandfather built this house back in, whenever, and you're like, wow, he must have been a smart guy, and he was probably a home builder. Your kids know you're not a home builder, but you built a fully functional cabin to suit their needs that was very comfortable in the cold, and it was everything you guys needed it to be, right? Yeah. They are empowered, I would assume, to take on challenges that most people would think are probably beyond their scope. They're like, no, you can figure it out. Like, my dad built a cabin. I watched him figure out how to build a cabin in front of me.
Oh, I think it absolutely positively impacted the girls. They were probably 8, 9, 10, 11 or something. And yeah, as a single dad, I had them, 3 days a week. So, I was mixed from taking them to school and packing their lunches and doing their homework. But man, every chance I got, I was up there. And at that point, I just drug them with me. it was just, they got their routine down of packing their bags. It would be like, Thursday night, pack your bag. And I would have their bags in the truck. I'd pick them up from school on Friday and we'd go straight up there. And I did a ton of stuff to make it special, and get them treats and s'mores and hot chocolate. And we had some magical times up there of, sleeping in sleeping bags on the floor of the cabin before there was walls and insulation, and giggling and laughing. And they would go off in the woods, and there were several times I was probably a bad parent, but I'd get focused on something and working on something, and all of a sudden it's like, crap, I haven't seen the kids in a half hour, an hour, and they're out there with sticks and playing, and they would be absolutely filthy. And, coming home on a Sunday night, nobody's taking a shower. They would have sticks in their hair and just dirty, filthy kids. And, I'm dropping them off to their mom, and, and she eventually just was like, all right, whatever. But she had to bathe them and get, try to brush the knots out of their hair. And they would go up there and they would turn feral. They had so much fun, and they were fine. They got really comfortable just being there. And sometimes, we'd heat up water and they'd take a shower with it, a hot pile of water, pouring over them. And there was a season of their life they will remember forever. And I think it toughened those girls up. They learned how to shoot up there. We'd get deer down there. They saw their first deer getting skinned and gutted.
I would agree with that, Jeff, because when we go camping and we get out of cell service and all this, you really do it is like a different element all of us get into.
Yeah.
Right. Especially the kids.
So picture that element of you camping, if you went up to the Sierras or you go to Kern River or something and you're there for 3, 4, 5 days, that vibe you get into, they were having that every other week, and it became a significant time. Yeah. I think they really, really toughened those little girls up, and scrapes and bruises and cuts and, just became.
No, that's so cool.
Yeah.
So you guys get this built out. You said the loss of your dad, you get the property, you and your brothers become closer. You build,
got us closer. Yeah.
Right. You build your structures on there. Was there a moment when you guys came together and you're like, holy shit, we bought 50 acres on Palomar Mountain, fully forested, and we were able to develop this into an amazing.
That kind of surrealness happened over and over and over again, where we would step back and all of a sudden just be like, dude, look at what we have. My brother Jim went huge. He built he bought plans and built like a 2-story, all intents and purposes, it was a house. And he went big. Me and my brother John were smaller. Ours were about 480 square feet. We built the same footprint. I put interior walls, so I had 2 bedrooms and a bathroom and a kitchen and a living room.
So, wait. You didn't go buy lumber and build a structure. Let's just.
Oh, yeah.
Like you kind of went cheater mode.
Total cheater.
You're not a home builder.
Correct.
So what's the cheater mode?
Okay. So most people, at least here in California, have heard of a Tough Shed. They sell them at Home Depot. You can buy a Tough Shed, this and that. There's a company like it called Shed World. The owner's Justin, great guy. Call him. He'll take care of you. Tell him Jeff said hi.
Shout out to Shed World.
Justin we connected with. He was a hunter. Anyways, we told him what we were dreaming, and of course, he wanted to make the sale, but really cool guy. And he went way out of the norm to get guys back in there. And what we did is we had him build what was their 2-car garage. So it was 20 by 24 feet, and it would have, at a house, it's the size of a 2-car garage. And normally there'd be a big garage door and you could pull 2 cars in. So we had them build the shell, but instead of a garage door, we had them put a man door, and we told them right where we wanted windows. And I just measured and designed everything for windows and this and that, and where I wanted the, front door and a back door. And they came and built the shell. So I put the foundation in, I poured concrete pilings and set beams, and then they built a plywood floor and then built us the shell, which came with a roof and windows, and gave me the jump start. And I took that and then built the interior walls. So I had 2 10 by 10 bedrooms, and then like a 4 by 8 bathroom, or maybe it was 6 by 8. I had a little kitchen and a living room.
Yeah, which is perfect. Like that's all you want, right? Like that.
And we insulated the walls, and inside we just did a shiplap. And I bought 16-foot boards of shiplap, and we put them on a trailer from Home Depot, go up there and cut them and just nail gutting them to the end. So the whole inside was this knotty pine shiplap. The kitchen, I basically took everything from an RV. So I went to a place that repairs RVs, and I bought a little stove with a 3-burner range that was propane that would go in an RV, and I built it into the cabinet. And we put a refrigerator in. It was a 3-way propane, refrigerator. The water heater was a 6-gallon water heater out of a motorhome. We put it above the bathroom, and it was propane, and you light it, get the pilot light going. The shower I built, or just bought a little prefab kit from Home Depot that went in the corner. We had a toilet and a sink. And I mean, right there, you've got everything you need.
Right.
Creature comforts. Covered.
Yeah. It had everything a house had, but it was miniature. It was simple. It was cheap, but it was very cozy, very
kind of the cabin vibes and all that.
Yeah.
And
functional. Yeah.
And you had never done any of this before?
No.
So
none.
like, what do you know about building interior walls or putting in showers?
Nothing. So the first thing we did was interior walls, and I knew a girl whose dad was a framer. So, hey, can I talk to your dad? Went over and didn't know the guy, and hey, how much would it cost for you to come down for a day, drive down there and teach me how to do framing? And luckily this guy was like, wait, where are we going? What? He's like, that sounds cool. And he's, you can give me a couple $100 for the day. I didn't know how to use a nail gun. I didn't know how to measure. I didn't know how to line up studs and top plates and bottom. I watched him and I just labored, and he just kind of showed me and paid him for the day. So for $400, I got schooled on frames.
Right.
Yeah, you got a master class in framing. You hired a guy, was his apprentice for a day, and you learned how to do that task.
Yeah. And then, I told you with the electrical and the plumbing, I just hit other people up. With the appliances, I was hitting the guy that was selling us to him and how do I wire this in? He goes, okay, so, you take the yellow wire, you take the blue wire, and this goes, and I'm writing everything down. The gas line, you do this. And I had another guy teach me how to sweat copper, and you get a torch and you do this. And I didn't know what I was doing, but I had a guy show me, and he goes, you heat it up and you just keep moving it and do this. And then you put the solder and flux. And it was like, okay, I got a lesson in that.
So how long do you think it was from when you first started to when your cabin was completed?
The majority of the work was over 2 years.
So 2 years?
Yeah, it was the majority of the work. But I would say it was 3 years before it was done. But I way slowed.
But when you had when you guys bought it to having that Thanksgiving, how long was that?
That was at 1.5 years.
Okay.
But when we bought it, we didn't even break ground until August of that year. There was big gaps in there where nothing's getting done because we've got life, we've got work. We're trying to who do we hire to bring a tractor?
Was there a point where you're like, did I bite off too much? What am I thinking? So how did you push through that?
Yeah, I think there were several times it's what am I doing? There was definitely times I was doubting, overwhelmed.
Well, Jeff, I think that's a lot of what stops us, right? Is we get the daydreaming and we actually get some plans and we start to walk down that path, but we hit some adversity. And then we're like, you know what? This is too much, right? What kind of led you to, you know what? I'm going to achieve this goal, right? I want to finish this. Yeah, just to
I think it kept feeding me and the daydream and visualizing there's what it would be at the end. And,
right.
And I had this wraparound porch and, the railing, and I was living a dream, and that dream kept feeding me. But there came a point where I was like, you know what, this is good enough. And I stopped working on it.
Right.
And then it was a season of enjoying it.
Which is awesome. That, I think that might be the coolest thing, is that you put all that blood, sweat, tears, the labor, just the, doing that, finishing that, and then to get to enjoy it.
Yeah.
So at that point, what is that like?
It was kind of hard for me to adjust because I guess one thing we haven't addressed is I'm a total ADHD guy.
So you're just used to boom,
I go.
Yeah.
I have a hard time sitting still, which helped me build that thing because I'm constantly needing something to do.
Right.
So going up there and not doing something was hard, but it was also trying to teach myself just sit in the peace and that's hard. Or if I want to do something, it's go for a hike, and I would go start exploring, or there was other things I was doing down there that, were just a little slower, and it was really nice.
Yeah.
So, I enjoy shooting and being able to just walk out on your deck and shoot.
Dude, right.
And I shot all the time. It was awesome. We started hunting it more. My daughter, Gemma, at 12 years old, got her hunting license, and then she shot her first buck.
It's awesome.
Got her up in a tree and taught her how to shoot.
What did she shoot it with?
A 223.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Most people think is really underpowered for a deer, but she's at that point, she maybe weighed 90 pounds. She's, came in at probably a little less than 30 yards.
Yeah.
Broadside.
That's awesome.
you know, and
That's amazing. That's huge.
so
That's
she just did a perfect shot and just dropped it. The next year at 13, she took her second buck. She shot that one. She missed the first shot. She took her next at about 50 yards when it stopped, and it stopped behind a tree, and she had to wait. It took a step out. She made another perfect shot and just dropped it in its track. And so people that think you can't hunt deers with an AR, and I chose an AR because there's no recoil and I'm dealing with a, 85, 90 pound girl.
No, it's a great choice.
She dropped 2 bucks 2 years in a row. Heart shotted both. And this is a girly girl. So those kind of experiences as a dad, watch her be almost, just ecstatic that she got it. And the next moment I saw the sadness come upon her and she almost started crying and she's realized she just killed something. And
yeah, she killed Bambi.
Yeah.
And you were partly responsible for
I was fully responsible. But in that moment, we, to teach her, like, if you kill something and you don't feel something, that's wrong. For you to feel something and be sad and crying because you just killed this beautiful animal, that is normal, know? And then we said a prayer and we thank God for providing us with food. And then, we took it back to the cabin. We process it.
Did you bring it to a butcher?
That one I processed myself, which I don't like doing because I'm sitting in a kitchen for 8 hours cutting and grinding.
That's
and packaging.
a lot. That's like minor feat.
Yeah,
everybody out there that does all that themselves, that's
if I can take it to a butcher, I absolutely will.
Yeah.
But I think that was like a Saturday night. So the Sunday, it would have been a Monday.
You're like at that point,
yeah.
Kinda...
And here it's so hot, you got no place to hang a deer. So, but being able to teach her those lessons. Right. And after the first one, she said, "Dad, I don't think I ever want to do it again." I was like, "Yeah, no problem. You don't have to, And the next year she came around and she's like, "You know what? I want to go hunting again." So those kind of experiences, where else are you going to have that in California?
Right. It's tough. It's tough.
And the bonding it became, between a dad and a daughter and the time sitting in a tree and the times up there working, I think it gave me and my daughters a relationship and a connection that in my mind is kind of unique. I know each one of us dads have our own unique, whether it's sports or however you connect with your daughters, but this is how I connected with mine. And it was in a beautiful place, in nature, wild and free. And I think it's toughened my daughters up.
Well, I think it's such a great point because when you can do something in the outdoors, right, and then you add in the hunting and all that, that is a different element where it's very hard to replicate that environment, the feelings, all about that. Some of my fondest experiences are hunting with my dad and my brother.
Yeah. And I got that with my daughters, in my mind and my heart were just like, I'll hold on to. And I know they have their own. So it's that dream I had, the risk I took.
It manifested.
It did.
Right.
And the reward, the benefit of the investment is going to be lifelong memories in the season. And it was.
So you're up there, you have your year of amazing experiences, you have your Thanksgiving, you guys all get your homes built and you're just enjoying life. Were there any negative experiences that happened while you were there at the cabin?
Oh, good question. There was a lot of adversity as far as like, struggles and getting material back. And luckily nobody was seriously injured, but there was a lot of like minor injuries, cuts, that kind of stuff. No major adversities except for my daughter, spring of 20, right before COVID, right before the shutdown, we were going to do Easter up there. And we had a couple years in a row done Easter where all the grandkids would come up and we would hide Easter eggs and treats and all that over maybe a quarter of an acre in the woods. And the kids would have a big Easter egg hunt and it was spring up there. So the wildflowers are starting to come up. It was a really magical time. And we were doing that several years. My mom really loved doing this. And so we have this Easter egg hunt and the adults go hide everything and the kids go running through and they're grabbing in logs and, getting up in trees and doing all this stuff. And my nephew all of a sudden goes, "Hey, there's a snake." And we all come over and look and it was this little baby rattlesnake on a rock sunning itself. We knew there was tons of rattlesnakes up there. We've seen tons of rattlesnakes. Me and my brothers know how to handle them. It was the first time we'd actually seen a rattlesnake on the property. And even though we know there's a ton on the mountain, And it was a learning experience. So we're like telling the kids, like, oh, look at the head, look at the shape, look at this, da 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 da. Da. And my wife was like, don't kill it. And I mean, it was like, I don't know, 10 inches long.
Oh, wow.
It was
That's
just this
super.
little
That's
baby
tiny.
rattlesnake, and it's spring and it was
Yeah.
warm. So it's this, it just,
Yeah.
they're not actually hatched. Rattlesnakes is the only reptile that's born live. So the mom was around there somewhere. It had just dropped this little baby rattlesnake.
Right.
And but my wife was like, don't kill it. So we put it in a container, and we were gonna take it down the mountain, release it. And the day goes on, no big thought. And this was up at my brother John's cabin, and my cabin was I don't know, 100 yards down the mountain through the forest.
Mm-hmm.
Later on that evening, I've got cooking a big pot of venison stew on the stove, and kids are out playing.
Like deer, venison?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was the deer we got from the
That
mountain.
you shot,
Yep. And it's in there cooking, and evening's starting to creep in. I don't know, it's maybe 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And one of my nieces, all of a sudden, I'm inside her cabin, I hear her yell, snake. And we had taught them, if you see a snake, you just stop and you back up and call for an adult. So I go out and I go down the hill. They were just 20 yards below the cabin. And sure enough, my niece was walking on the log and saw it, yelled snake, and backed up. So I went down there, and oh yeah, little baby rattler. There was probably 5, 6, 7 of my nieces and nephews. They were playing tag and stuff in the forest down there. So I said, hey, come over here. I want to, this and that. And I'm showing them more about the snake. And as soon as I took the head off, they were coming up and looking at it. And my daughter Gemma's right there standing next to a log that's, 2 feet in diameter. So they're all looking at it. And we're talking and saying, you see the color, and giving my niece a, hey, you did a good job. You did exactly what you said. And we're just sitting there talking. And all of a sudden my daughter just goes, ow, and like backs up, and everybody like goes, and I'm like looking, and in the leaves where they're standing, there's another little baby rattlesnake. And I just walked over and stepped on it and just took my heel on my boot and just crushed the thing. But the fact that she said, ow, as a dad, I instantly scooped her up. And like I said earlier, she's all of 85 pounds. I pick her up and I'm just looking. And there's 2 little dots on that little ball of her heel. Mm-hmm. She just got bit by a baby rattlesnake. And we're remote. And I had thought through and through several times, what do I do if somebody gets hurt? What do I do if, someone cuts themselves, something falls on them, I fall. I'm up there a lot by myself. What would I do if, I break a leg, or, God forbid something happens. And I knew that there's a manned fire station up on top of the mountain. And so I'm like, okay, that's my nearest place of help. And it was always kind of my thought was like, well, I would go there, or try to call them. You never think something's happened. So I didn't have their phone, the phone number in my phone. I didn't even have it written down. But I knew like that was the nearest help.
Right.
So in that moment, all of a sudden realizing that the thing my dad always said about like, you suck the venom out. And I've heard over and over, like, oh, that's not.
Yeah. We always got the exact same thing. Right?
Yeah. But at that point, you're like, what the hell? Could it hurt?
Couldn't hurt. So
I like scoop her up. I run up the hill to my truck, and I throw her in the back seat of my truck, and I instantly just start sucking, just trying to get in. Man, it's harder than you think, but you're like sucking for all you're worth. And I sucked so hard that blood was coming out.
Right.
And I was spitting, and I don't know if I was getting venom or whatever. And my daughter at this point, I think, is just in scared shitless, in shock. And I just suck till the point where I'm like, I guess that's good, and then it's like, okay, what's next? I had my wife and my brother Jim there. I told my wife, I said, call 911, tell him there's a 13-year-old girl with a rattlesnake bite in the leg, and that we're going to the Palomar fire station, and have them contact the fire station and let them know we're en route. And then I told my brother, get in. I told my wife, get in. And and we like literally baja.
I mean, is your daughter still like coherent at this point? She's talking, or
she's just scared.
can you start to feel?
She's fine.
Yeah.
I mean, she's in the back. She's just more scared.
Yeah.
She's seeing our reaction, our vibe.
Right.
She doesn't know. At that point, there was really no pain.
Right.
And I think that the most dangerous part up till that point was my driving out of there.
For sure. Yeah, totally.
Dude, I was hauling ass to the point where like they're like, Jeff, slow down, like shit's bouncing around the back, like like I was running on adrenaline.
Right.
Not to mention, I left 5 or 6 kids on the side of a hill where there was already
hey, they'll be all right.
Rattlesnakes.
They'll be all right.
And I just left them.
Yeah.
I didn't even think twice about it. My brother John was there. We had some in-laws there, but they were further up the mountain. And eventually the kids ran up and got them. They had no idea we even left. They had no idea what happened. That pot of venison stew was still on the stove cooking.
Well, I mean, a rattlesnake bite is one of those things that happens where you don't fuck around.
Yeah.
It's kind of
it's one of those.
It's kind of mythical in the sense, though, as kids, we're constantly told about them.
Right.
What do you do?
Yep.
But you don't ever know anybody that's ever been bit.
Right.
And so it was, in a lot of ways, like all those fears as a kid of like rattlesnake bite, rattlesnake. Well, you, what do you do? And so, yeah, is she going to die in 5 minutes or not? You don't know.
Did the fire station have the antivenom where they just, so you're in the,
no, so
okay, so you get in the TRD.
Yeah.
Right. You're jamming up.
And we haul ass and we get to the fire station. And by the time we pull in there, a bunch of firefighters.
They're ready?
They had nothing else to do. I mean, they don't get a lot of action up there.
Yeah.
So we pull in a fire station and they're all standing out there.
Yeah. And
they instantly are like, calm down. Everything's going to be okay. And they like, everything's good.
That's always the best, right?
Yeah. And
roll up and
they're making me check myself. Like they see that I'm dad running on adrenaline and they're like, dude, like chill out. Like we got her. Everything's good. And so I'm like, okay, sigh of relief. Like we're in good hands. And they're like, where is she? This and that. Where did she get bit? And they're all calm and they're just telling me, don't worry. Everything's good. This and that. So like I had this, I don't know, 30 seconds where all of a sudden I was like, okay, everything's all right. And they said, just don't worry. The helicopter is already en route.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh shit. Like things just escalated a little.
Right, exactly. Like, heartbeat back up to 155.
Yeah, like they ahead of time heard what was going on and they called in a helicopter.
Yeah. Because they're not fucking around.
No.
Like these guys are not like, hey, we're not going to.
13-year-old girl.
Rattlesnake bite.
And they know how remote we are, how far we are. There's not a hospital.
Right. They're probably thinking there's already a time
in driving distance.
Right. Yep.
So all of a sudden then it's like, oh shit. Like I'm not going back to the cabin. I'm not having stew tonight. Like I'm not like, this is like, okay.
But like when they get her out and all that, are they starting to treat her or they're just trying to like get her ready for the ride? No. So they said, we need you to follow us. There's an LZ about a mile and a half from here. And you need to follow us. We're going to pull in there and the helicopter's en route. And so I was like, okay. And then the adrenaline goes back up. They take a fire truck or two and they're going and I'm following and they just leave her in the back. One of the firefighters jumped in the back with her and they had, I think my wife jump in one of the fire trucks. Yeah. And so we go to this clearing, which, is a landing zone up there. And we pull in and then they're monitoring her and she seems fine. Everything's fine. They've got her, they blood pressure, everything. And they're like, everything's gonna be all right. Everything's gonna be all right. Is your daughter like chill? Is she doing? I think she's in shock again. Like still at this point, or she wasn't saying much. I think she was just scared out of her mind, out of everything going on. But now when you get to the fire station, the paramedics now are with you. Do you feel a little bit more like, hey, they maybe checking vitals? And I felt that for 30 seconds until they said a helicopter's en route, because then that escalated things to like, okay. Yeah. And then I'm listening to the guy trying to talk to the helicopter pilot, and the helicopter pilot's having a hard time getting up that high in elevation. I don't fully understand, but like something with the heat and the thinness of the air, it makes it hard for a helicopter to get that high. And they were talking about how much fuel they had and that this and that, because I guess of the weight. And they had a hard time getting up there, but they made it up. And then they were like, but we can't take him
because of the weight. And then they're
Right.
literally asking me like, how much do you weigh? And I'm like, I don't know, like 100 and, 85.
Did you tell the
190.
truth, or did
Yeah.
you try to cheat
And
at that point? You
no,
actually went truthful?
yeah, absolutely. And they were like, leave everything else you got. Like they were counting pounds. I don't, once again, I'm not a helicopter
Did the
pilot.
paramedic get on, or there was
No.
already a paramedic on there? Like there
No,
was
so
a firefighter
it
on.
flew up with a pilot and two EMTs on board.
Yeah, so they were good.
And, and they get the stretcher out, they get her on, they're hooking her up. But it's like, no way in hell, like I'm leaving her, like we're going, and so, but they were really worried about weight. And, anyways, I get in the cockpit, and so I'm sitting next to the pilot, and they get her in the back. I can't see her.
Mm-hmm.
And they give me the earphones and the mic, and dude, that thing picks up and takes off and drops off this mountain. We drop down, and they start heading down towards a San Diego Children's Hospital.
Mm-hmm.
They had radioed ahead, and they found out the nearest place with the antivenom.
Mm-hmm.
We're flying down, and I'm listening to the pilot, listening to the guys in back. The pilot's radio in Miramar Air Station, which is a Marine Corps station down there. Listening to him being like, whatever their talk is, we're flight this and that. We're requesting permission to fly through airspace. We've got a this and that, critical, blah 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 blah. And I'm like, that shit scares the crap out of you. And they cut through Miramar Air Station, and they're just like beelining it. And it was, I want to say, less than 50 minutes from the time she got bit till we got there. They got her on a helicopter.
Dang.
We flew to San Diego, and they were unloading her at the Children's Hospital. It was that quick.
Yeah.
And at one point, it wasn't funny, but I guess it's funny now. We're flying. They put a headset on Gemma to protect her ears, and they were trying to talk through her. Well, I could hear the paramedics in the back, but I couldn't see them. So they're like, Gemma, can you hear us? Gemma, talk to us. Can you hear us? And I'm up here thinking, oh God,
like,
she's
oh,
dying.
shit.
Like she's gone unconscious.
Oh my
And they're like, Gemma, can you hear us? Speak to us, Gemma. And then all of a sudden they're like, oh wait, hold on. Click. Her headset wasn't plugged in. Gemma, can you hear us now? And she's like, yeah. And then I was like, oh fuck. Like,
oh my gosh. Yeah, that's.
So we land. They get her out on a stretcher, and the paramedics are telling me, you know what? We think it's a dry bite. A dry bite is where a rattlesnake will hit you with its fangs, but it doesn't pump venom. And they're like, we're thinking this is a dry bite. We're not seeing any effects. Her vitals are all good. Like, so at that point, I'm like, okay, like, cool. Like maybe it's not a big deal. At that point, I think my wife had called her mom and like told her what happened. So at that point, I was like, okay, dry bite. It's been 50 minutes.
Right.
They get her down. They get her into an ER room, and she's fairly mellow. And we're talking, no pain, thinking okay. They sent a toxicologist who deals with poison and stuff.
Right.
And he came in, and he's asking me like, how do you know it was a rattlesnake? This and that. And I'm like, it was a Pacific speckled, rattlesnake. Like I knew exactly what kind. And he goes, how do you know? And I'm like, well, here's a picture. And I'm like, we got the rattlesnake. I go, I know what it is. He's like, okay, that helps. We know what antivenom to give, because it's very different than a diamondback or a 10-bar rattler or a sidewinder. So, Mojave Green, they all have different venoms. So knowing what specific one and having taken a picture of it, confirmed it, was a huge piece of the puzzle. But since she was having no reaction, these guys were just like, okay, we'll be back. And he left. Like 5 minutes later, all of a sudden, my daughter's like, Dad, my leg, it's like burning. And she's grabbing her inside of her thigh and like, oh, it's really starting to hurt and it's burning and I'm feeling it. And that was like the first sign that like, okay, maybe.
Maybe this had like some legit.
One part I didn't say is when I was driving to the fire department, my mouth started tingling and burning, which I thought, okay, I had venom in my mouth.
Exactly.
And it was tingly and weird for, I don't know, half hour. And I'm like, okay, there was definitely venom in my mouth. But that was the first sign we really had from her. And it went from 0 to 60 in like 5 minutes to Dad, I feel it, to Dad, it hurts, to, oh my God, Dad. And so it's like trying to get a doctor and, trying to get their attention in the ER and like, okay, you guys got to do something. It was 15, 20 minutes. I'm in this room with her and it went to 100. She was excruciating. She started to cry and she started, Dad, and she's grabbing further and further up her leg towards like her crotch area. And she's like, oh, it's hurting, Dad, Dad, Dad. Finally, I'm like, you guys you got to do something. And the nurse was like, oh my gosh, okay. Gets the doctor. They come in, they had her on an IV. We've got the antivenom coming. Now that we know that there's actually venom in her, let's speed this up. We've got the antivenom coming. It got worse and worse and worse. So finally they show up with the antivenom and the doctor tells me, we're going to give her the antivenom. It is going to be like you flip a switch. It's going to go through the IV. It will get into her system and it counteracts the proteins of the venom. So they put a shot of antivenom in there, get it into the system. Nothing. No reaction. Watching this little 13-year-old and just crying and she's just shaking and she's sweating and I'm like, you guys got it. And they go, well, we can't. We already gave her fentanyl and we already gave her a dose of antivenom. We can't do anything for her. She has to wait an hour. I sat there in that ER with her for an hour holding this girl that was just in the most immense pain that I've ever seen her in. It was just heartbreaking. But why neither one had any effect, I don't know. And after an hour, she was in bad shape and they moved her to an ICU unit. I think it was around like midnight. They finally decided to sedate her and they gave her something that kind of knocked her out. And they were drawing blood like every 30 minutes and testing the blood, I think, for the protein and the snake venom. And they sedated her. Even when she was sedated, she was sitting there just moaning and turning and just sweating. It was painful. And somewhere around 1 or 2 in the morning, the toxicologist came back and was like, we're going to give her another round of antivenom. And they gave it. And within 2 minutes, she all of a sudden just went to just got peaceful and just stopped. And she slept the rest of the night. She woke up at like 8 or 9 the next morning. And it was like she had a rough night out partying and was hungover and beat up. And she kind of came to and was like, whoa, like what happened? And like, she was herself again. Within a week, she was 90% back to herself. But that was the most traumatic thing about being remote, off grid.
Right.
So I think lessons learned from there is like, have that safety plan, have a backup, know where help is, run through your head. What would you do if it was me? What would you do if it was my kid? And I think that's probably good advice for even our homes.
Anything, right.
Or you're on vacation. You go down to Mexico, you go wherever.
Yeah,
like,
we're not even, that's not even on our radar.
Yeah.
We're not even thinking about that.
Yeah.
So one question. So you're at the fire station. You're in your 30 seconds of, okay, I got the professionals handling it. They're telling me to be calm. Everything's going to be okay. Now, your mouth is burning and your lips are tingling. At any point, did you be like, oh, by the way, I ingested some of the venom because I did what you're not supposed to do and I sucked on her ankle for, 3 minutes?
I feel like he kept that quiet.
No, I don't swallow, Mike. I spit.
But I mean, you obviously are feeling the effects of venom in your mouth, or is it just like hey, I'm a man, it's okay, I'm sure I'll be fine, or do you let them know?
I don't recall if I mentioned it or not.
Okay.
The adrenaline was pumping so much.
My guess is not.
I don't recall.
Yeah.
Well, apparently I got some amount in my mouth.
For sure. Yeah.
If that amount was a drops or I don't know how many whatever measurement you want to say, if I got a little bit out and that affected my daughter a little bit less, then wasn't it worth it?
Right. So you guys basically buy 50 acres, unincorporated forest. You're able to grade it, build, have these amazing holidays there, family experiences, like just awesome, right? Sure. What are a couple nuggets you could give to our listeners? How do you go from the daydreaming to making it happen? How did you do that?
I think in hindsight, it's don't be afraid of taking a risk. Don't be afraid of the unknown. We battle so often in our own heads of, I can't because this or that or the money. I had 100,000 of those thoughts over these things. And you just can't, don't buy into them.
So you really started with, hey, I'm going to cut a couple trees down, and that's going to lead to.
Yeah. And it's just, it's 1,000 little hurdles. If I were to think of the whole thing, it would stress me out. It'd be overwhelming. I'd be like, oh, hell no. And don't let that negative talk and all the reasons stop you from doing something. And if it's learning how to sail a boat, or you want to travel to some place, or you want to learn something, break it down to little hurdles and get over one thing, and then the next, and then the next, and then the next. And all of a sudden you've done that 10 times and you look back and you're like, oh crap, there's a spot in the forest cleared and it's flat. And then you do it again, there's like a foundation, and then you blink again and there's a structure, and it's like.
Well, no, I think it is that. Anything we've accomplished in life, it really is that first step, right? And I always say, if you do the first, you're probably going to do the second. If you can do the second, you're going to do the third, right? If you do the third, you will do the fourth. But if you look at, hey, how do I get to my 100th step from my first, right? That's not going to happen.
Yeah.
Right. So I think you could have very easily got intimidated by saying, how am I going to build a cabin off grid in this forest?
Yeah.
This is not going to happen, right? But to your point, you broke it down. Hey, it's 1, 2, 3, 4. And then when we get to 100, holy shit.
Yeah.
Right? We have some pretty cool stuff that's happened.
It's exactly that. Every time I get intimidated, every time I'm like, I don't have the money, I don't have the time, I don't have the energy to then, I just remind myself, it doesn't matter. Focus on the one thing.
Right.
Get up there next weekend and do X, do this, do that. It was a lot of help from friends and a lot of other people that saw my dream and wanted to then get part of that dream.
Are there any people you want to acknowledge right now that helped you achieve your dream?
Yeah, there's a lot of people. I mean, Paul Delmas helped with the electrical. Ani, what's that guy? Lives on the corner. Help
Donnie the plumber.
Donnie the plumber.
Right.
Mike was instrumental in all kinds of stuff. Mike's the kind of guy that he doesn't know. He won't know it, but he'll like, yeah, I'm in. Let's show up. Let's get this done.
Yep.
He's just a bulldozer of getting stuff done. Brian Jackson, the old framer guy. He's a great guy. Shane Clausen, who was a young kid who I mentored, who honestly, the first time I took him up there, he had no idea which side of a hammer to hold. He could not. He was the greenest, weakest little Southern California kid that you've ever seen. And he cut his teeth and I worked that kid over and over. But
my own experience, if you ask people for help, 99% of the time, people will want to help you. You want to help people, right?
Yeah.
You want to do that, right? And if you're willing to go out and ask, like you were willing to ask for help. Hey, I don't know how to plumb. I don't know how to do electrical. I'm not the great framer, but I'm willing to ask for help on people that do this. They're going to help you.
I think that if you have a dream, whatever that dream is,
it's contagious, 100%.
Yeah. And I've seen people with a dream that I think, is crazy. Like a couple of guys wanting to start a podcast, and you're just like,
right. I got to go over there and sit for 4 hours and just talk about something. No, but it's true. Everybody we've asked has been like, dude, I'll do it. Everybody.
Yeah. I mean, somebody could have a dream that like, my dream is to go to Disney World and I want to save up. And you're like, okay, I'll support you. It's like, I think having the dream, speaking it, sharing it, passion, it's contagious. And I've learned that too. Yeah. Having that dream and the drive and keeping it, speaking it, putting it out there, involving other people. I couldn't have done it without other people.
Right.
And involving people then makes it so
you're right.
greater.
When you involve other people, it also puts you on the clock, right? You feel like it pushes you forward because these people you're talking about, they've helped you. If they give you ideas, they give you advice, they actually went out to the site. You need to finish that.
The dream, I don't think, was just for me. It was shared with different families, different friends. And I think it benefited a lot of other people. And you're right. And then that feeds me and keeps you motivated.
Right.
So.
Do you have any closing comments, Mike?
Well, yeah. Well, what I'm hearing is you asked friends for help, and then each time someone came and helped and spent a weekend or a few days or gave you some of their labor, like they got an experience after that, right? Like they enjoyed the time that they spent with you building something amazing, right? So the fellowship, it wasn't just all, sweat and labor and gritting your teeth and putting up with it. It's like, well, no, every time we've gone and done something, it's always been an amazing time because we get to do it together and go through and have those experiences. Like we always have it.
No, and that's a great point. Like that is the journey is the good old days, right? That is it.
It really is, right? And so don't be afraid to ask for help.
Yeah.
Right. And don't be afraid of the journey. I think too many people get focused on that end result, that goal, and it seems daunting. You break it down into bite-sized pieces and enjoy each of those pieces and each of those accomplishments, because you're going to build off of all of those successes.
Amen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Jeff, we appreciate you coming in. Mike and I were looking forward to you coming back. The story is amazing. I think what you really have given people tonight that have listened is some amazing advice, and just take that first step, right? If you have a dream, if you want to do something, right, no matter where you're at, take that first step.
Thanks.
Hey,
Way to
we
commit.
appreciate you.
Yeah.
We love you.
Yeah.
You know, we're going to have you back. We definitely have a part
Anytime.
3 in this, and it was
Anytime.
awesome tonight. Thanks, everybody. We will see you next time.
All right. Thanks, guys.
You're welcome. Thank you.